So 2024 is starting to wind down, and we are now faced with one of the bigger news stories to close out the year in gaming. And the irony of it is this isn't actually a new news story. This is about Call of Duty Black Ops 6 Pro enhancement on the PlayStation 5 Pro. We heard about this Pro enhancement all the way back in November, but for some reason, it's making the rounds over again. And man, oh man, is it hitting us with a bang. Why is that? Well, briefly, we heard about this Pro enhancement in November. And of course, it was the centrifuge of a lot of fanboy fodder. A lot of fanboys were like, oh, look at this. The first Xbox game, first party game of many to play better on the PlayStation 5 Pro, right? Because we've heard of Diablo, Indiana Jones, all these other games likely being PlayStation 5 Pro enhanced. And in the case of Diablo, Activision Blizzard saying, oh, we can't wait till we, get our hands on this Pro enhancement, right? Put it on a platform, all this stuff, right? And it was used in these console warring streets to say, aha, you guys are going to make games that are going to look best on our platform. But then something happened. A wave of PlayStation 5 Pro enhanced games, had some notable visual flaws, or at worst, they performed worse than the PlayStation 5 base counterpart. That caused an uproar too. And Call of Duty Black Ops 6 was one of the games that at the very least had the visual flaws in it, right? So then that caused the other side, understandably so, right, to say, oh, well, look at PlayStation 5 Pro, you guys got scammed, $700 scam, and yeah, your games are worse over there, ha 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 ha, right? But then Mark Cerny said, hold on, gotta grab the bull by the horns, we gotta fix this perception problem. He went and did a presentation, brought Insomniac with him for part of the interviews and sit-downs they were gonna do, and he basically said, hey, look, this is something new, this is AI and machine learning, so it takes time to maturize, but this is not some run-of-the-mill technology. Like, this is the real deal, and it is going to fuel the future in a major way, right? Like, this is only part of it. Like, we got other things that we're doing with AMD. Like, we're going to blow the roof off of console gaming. And subsequent to that, you started to see some of the PlayStation 5 Pro enhanced games that had issues start to resolve them slowly but surely. And then subsequent Pro enhanced games started releasing without issues. And they are heavily favored by the likes of Digital Foundry and so forth. Space Marine 2 being one of those recent enhancements, right? And what we stopped seeing since the Mark Cerny, at least for the time being, but what we stopped seeing for the time being, since the Mark Cerny presentation, are these bad rollouts. It's like PlayStation gets it now. They can't operate like that and have the perception take such a dink. And, everybody starts flocking and buying this thing, right? So then you once again see Digital Foundry bring up this PlayStation 5 Pro enhancement for Call of Duty Black Ops 6 that goes even further than Space Marine 2's enhancement and is knocking the socks off of all of the critics, right? So now we got to break this up as we discuss this and think about this in three parts. Number one, let's look over the story in detail. How did we get here? Let's look at these changes that now have brought us to this point, closing out 2024 and realizing the potential of the PlayStation 5 Pro enhancements and PSSR. And lastly, what are the lessons about PSSR, PlayStation 5 Pro, and all the rhetoric behind it? That said, let's get into it. This is Quick Dose with your boy, MM2K. Let's waste no more time. What's up, folks? It is your boy, MM2K of Hard Knock Digital Culture, Cloud Dosage, MM2K Gaming, back again with another episode of Quick Dose. This is where we talk about the latest and greatest in the video game news. Quickly, I ain't got no script. This is all from the grip. And I hope everybody is getting prepared for or is having a happy new year, depending on when you're hearing this. Do us a huge favor. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and rock those bells for notifications, please. And also, when it comes to live content, we are going through a schedule change. Hopefully it's temporary, but definitely stay tuned to the channel as we describe what's going on, and so you're aware of the schedule changes. All right, so let's talk about it. Like I said, I want to talk about this in 3 parts. I want to talk about the story, the changes, and the lessons. But first and foremost, let's get into what these PlayStation 5 Pro enhancements are all about. In order to do so, I got to do this. Matter of fact, let's show this bigger. All right. So this is courtesy of Neb on X. And he says Call of Duty Black Ops 6 PlayStation 5 Pro updates are detailed. 4K PSSR, higher quality, shadows, ambient inclusion, reflections, space, screen space, global illumination, 120 frames hertz mode that has PS5 60 frames per second settings. VRR mode exceeds 60 FPS. All right. So those are the enhancements and the changes that we were told about by Treyarch. Right? And as you can see, Digital Foundry has done a comparison of it, and they're actually looking at these changes, and they did so recently. There's a lot of things that they had to say about that. But before we get to what they said recently, again, a lot of people went to these Twitter streets and said, haha, look at this. This is going to run the gambit of how ridiculed the Xbox consoles are going to be, right? And Cold Blood and I, we were talking about this on the NRO podcast, in our other podcasts here on this channel, that, yeah, I mean, just imagine, like, if the definitive version of the game is going to be on the PlayStation 5 Pro. I mean, every time you go to a GameSpot or an IGN, everywhere you look, it's going to say reviewed on PlayStation 5 Pro, viewed on PlayStation 5 Pro. That's only going to hurt Xbox even further, right? So the laughs were starting to mount, but then something bonehead started to happen. We started to have like a series of PlayStation games that were not well optimized with PSSR. And that's not a surprise. What surprised is they passed certification and they were allowed to launch. And in some instances, like Avatar, if you happen to just if you just happen to buy a PlayStation 5 Pro, even though you had a base PlayStation 5 earlier, and you had a game like Avatar, once you booted up Avatar on your PlayStation 5 Pro, it actually forced you into playing the worst version of the game because the PlayStation 5 Pro PSSR enhancement was sloppily applied. Okay. And I'm very confident in saying sloppily applied instead of just implying that PSSR didn't work, because again, the team that you see on the screen that's being critically acclaimed for the PS5 Pro enhancement is A, an Xbox developer, and B, they were able to address issues that they had with PSSR in half a day. Right? So that again was a hit to Sony's perception about PSSR. And I'm gonna be honest with you, it was well deserved. It was well deserved that they got a hit to their perception, because they should have never approved those lazily applied and sloppily applied enhancements. Again, PSSR is something that was being applied to these games after the fact. We've seen similar things with DLSS, right? Remember when DLSS 1.0 rolled out, and then there were a whole bunch of issues with DLSS 1.0. DLSS 1.0 was not always the darling of the industry. And as it was being applied to certain games and there were issues, you know what I'm saying? They had to, they had a perception hit to them. I will say, at least to NVIDIA's defense, they seem to have a better Q&A process, to where, like, some of the more egregious situations, like Avatar, you weren't forced into playing it. If DLSS didn't work, guess what? Hit a toggle, shut it off. Right? but you didn't have that option at first with PlayStation. Okay, so now, with that being said, we got PSSR, very capable. To this date, over 80 games have been launched, and only about 7 of them are bad PSSR, and either they're bad or they have some visual flaws, quite noticeably some noising with some shimmering and some white specks that pop up on the screen. You know what I mean? But for the most part, again, 80 plus overall enhancements. I think 86 to 88 the last time I checked. And out of that 88, maybe 7 have issues or just are bad. Knowing this reality, and actually this stuff that everybody's talking about with PSSR and Call of Duty, I actually saw the DF clip from the person that they had got and review this. I actually saw this a week or so ago, and I was waiting for this review. While I was waiting for the full review, I watched the DF clip where I think his name is Tom Furl of Digital Foundry had broke down, hey, look, now we got a better understanding, courtesy of Treyarch, what is wrong with PSSR when it has these issues. It's a denoiser. So a lot of these games were built with denoisers that, are built into the engine, and they are made specifically for their game, opposed to PSSR that's like broadly trying to address everything, and it's not been developed in everything yet. So there are going to be some developers reasonably that have created their own denoisers that are going to work better than PSSR out of the bat, especially if PSSR is just being applied over the top, right? No big deal. The problem is that if you're going to use the benefits of PSSR, you're going to have to account for the denoiser in PSSR not being as effective, and you got to code around that. And these developers clearly aren't doing that. So that's why you're getting I can't say every case, but that's why in a lot, if not most of these cases, you're getting the shimmering and the white specks that are on there. Here's the thing. Digital Foundry fixed their issues in half a day. Half a day. Why? Because they weren't trying to run a gimmick on gamers. They said, we have the utmost concern about how our game is portrayed. Hell, the data shows they sold over 80% of their copies on PlayStation. So yeah, we better get this PlayStation 5 Pro enhancement version right, because it'll mean the sky's the limit for us, right? Where everybody else probably was trying to get a second win. We'll use Avatar as an example, and it pains me because I love at least the vision of Ubisoft games, but the execution of them over the last couple of years haven't been the best. But to see what they've done with one of their, if not their best developer, Massive, where, they may have great visual efforts, but the gameplay elements are just half behind, right? And then you have a case where Avatar on the base consoles looked great, but it didn't sell a lot, right? So now you got an opportunity, if you're Ubisoft, to say, hey, look, we can sell a whole bunch of copies with these new PlayStation 5 Pro enhanced copies. The game is discounted because it didn't sell a lot. So if we put a PlayStation 5 Pro sticker on there, then, we're going to sell a lot of copies. And I think that was their motive. They didn't really, again, take the care to it to apply it on the top like they would, like Treyarch did with, with their Pro enhancement. And then that's why you got the shimmery, messed up mess that you got of Avatar. And then all they did is essentially added a toggle. That tells you where you stand with Ubisoft and their concern over you and how they ship out their content. It's been a running theme with them over the last couple of years, but that's here nor there. All right. So being that I saw this video already, I had put a tweet out, and I want to show you guys the tweet. That isn't the tweet. Am I going to find? There goes my tweet. Okay, here we go. I probably should move my tweet over. Okay. So in this tweet, I said, and this wasn't even about Call of Duty yet. But it's funny because Call of Duty came up in the conversation. I said, but they keep telling me that PSSR can't outperform FSR. Well, don't fret, they'll find a new narrative. And again, this is after the Mark Cerny interview, where now you're starting to see these pro patches get more praise. They're rolled out better. They're actually making sustained improvements. Again, you have, what do you call it? You have Black Myth Wukong, right? You have Space Marine 2, and then now you have Call of Duty. So I say that. Now this user, and look, and I want to say this in advance. Shout out to this person. Nothing against them. From what I could surmise and see, they're actually a PlayStation fan. They remind me in the vein of the co-host of this channel, Cold Blood, where they're very critical at times and they're very skeptical at times, right? But sometimes the nuance might be missed here, like to where it's not, sometimes you got to have a carrot and a stick approach and not have stick all the time, right? So, there's nothing wrong with being critical. There's nothing wrong with holding the feet to the fire of these multi-billion and trillion-dollar corporations. But sometimes you got to pay attention to context because everything is in black and white. There's often nuance and it's gray, right? So it seemed like that this person, as it relates to PSSR, they didn't see the nuance of what was going on. They just labeled it as it being bad. They said PSSR has been so underwhelming so far that when it outperforms FSR in a third-party title, we celebrate, right? So I responded to that and I said, I'll agree that Sony allowing poorly applied patches to pass certification was dumb as F. A lot of the FUD behind PSSR could have been avoided. I said, that said, those were less than 10% of the patches. Treyarch show it's a lazy dev issue as well as they fixed their issue in half a day. Now, again, I said this on the 26th. This article came out on the 29th of December that everybody's celebrating because I knew, remember, I already saw Tom Farrell's DF clip of explaining what was going on with PSSR, how Treyarch approached it and fixed it in half a day. And that enlightened me to understand, okay, this is what's going on with some of the issues, right? But I just alluded to it in my first response. Then they said, well, Black Ops 6 is still poor PSSR in the campaign. It's a shimmering mess, right? Now they're saying this on the 26th. Mind you, in Tom Farrell's video, they addressed this and it was applied on the 10th. Silent Hill 2 is an absolute joke. There is no argument there. My brother Cold Blood tried that out. Guerrilla didn't even bother using it in both Horizon games. Black Myth didn't use it in 60 frames per second mode. Lords of the Fallen looks fantastic, but it doesn't use PSR, it uses TSSR. Okay, so here again, this is all about how you apply PSSR and what you want to do with it. Now, you may have a situation with, let's take a look at all these. Horizon doesn't use it, right? Horizon doesn't use it because they found an ulterior way to deal with upgrades using something else that they've been working on. You got to remember, Guerrilla themselves have their own technologies and stuff. They created the Decima engine, right? So they found their other technologies that'll work with this. Again, PlayStation isn't just resting its laurels on PSSR. They're working on other visual solutions with AMD. Mark Cerny talked about that in his presentation. So them not using PSSR is not the end of the world. The games that are using PSSR, the majority of the PlayStation 1 games that are using PSSR, Spider-Man, and God of War, and then hell, even though it's not a first party game, but it's an exclusive title at the moment, Stellar Blade, they look phenomenal with PSSR. Phenomenal. Like Stellar Blade looks like a PC game, like a high-end PC game on my Pro. And I got the video to prove it. I just didn't say anything because I knew this video was coming from Tom Farrell, and I had bookmarked this response because I'm gonna eat this dude up later. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna wait till it comes out. I'm gonna eat him up later. So I set my bro up here, BB28, and use his own words as rope. You know what I'm saying? You know the saying, right? And then, so he then continues and says, I bought the Pro for 3 games in specific Black Myth Wukong, blah, 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 blah. So I finally respond. I said, so several things I'm confused on here. Number one, and this is after the digital Foundry video comes. As you can see, we had this conversation on the 26th. This comes out on the 30th. I said, so several things I'm confused on here. AI machine learning should be considered best implemented on most personalized software. In this case, that's PlayStation first party. Outside of Silent Hill, which was announced pre-launch, why would you expect a big update other than 2? And then he says also, and I said also, you spoke of Black Ops 6 being a shimmery mess. This is the first account I'm hearing of that. Plus, December 10th, they released a patch and fixed the shimmering noise mostly. Do you have footage of what you're experiencing, right? And I put here, I only asked for footage because I have personal footage of PSSR, and I said, despite a hiccup in rolling out a few games, launch month subsequent patches work great, and I show them Spider-Man, and I believe I have my Stellar Blade gameplay, which hit like 4K views, or it's close to 4K views. So then he comes in, then he's like, okay, he's in so many words, he's trying to concede, okay, you got me, right? Because remember, what he said at the beginning is PSSR has been so underwhelming, right? He says, dude, PSSR is very good when it works. Avatar is a mess. Outlaws is a mess. Silent Hill 2 is pretty bad. Black Ops 6 has shimmer. The contrary to what it should be. Alan Wake 2 has a itty, shimmery, wavering 60 frames per second mode. The only reason I'm complaining is because I bought the cons. Okay, that's not what you said before. You're saying that you said before that it was an overall mess. Rhetoric matters because people that don't or that are not the wiser, they pay attention to these words. So I said, so is that PSSR or is that lazy development? Prime example, Black Ops 6, the shimmer you keep referencing, heavily minimized by the way, and machine learning will clean remaining small remnants over time, was fixed in half a day as described here. And then lastly, I say, Treyarch has shown that if you're not lazy in your approach, because you're adding PSSR after major development, you can easily address issues. These devs clearly don't want to do that. Plus, again, we're talking 7 games out of 80 plus. Dev issue, my friend. So, what's the conclusion here? What is the thing that we should take from all this? From this wonderful thread that I've had with this person, BB28. Shout out to them. Like I said, don't go after them, but it's a very interesting thread if you catch it on Twitter. What is the thing that we should take away from? PSSR as an AI and machine learning technique is not the problem. Your enemy is lazy development, for one. And for 2, mismanaged quality control by Sony. I'm not mad that a lot of people were asking questions. I'm not even mad that people like my homie BB attributed it to PSSR. That was the wake-up call that Sony needed. But for those of us that are content creators that cascade facts and all that other stuff, and even people like BB28 after the fact when the dust settles, we have to concede. And we got to know what the root cause is of issues. Because if we just start blurting out certain things, the people that are actually the root cause of problems, they get away with those things and nothing gets better. Here's the fact of the matter. PSSR is a great tool with a lot of potential. And if rolled out properly and applied properly, it's going to change console gaming and, gaming enhancements on the PlayStation side forever in a very positive way. And we need this because even NVIDIA and AMD said, look, there's not much we can do natively to enhance visuals. Not right now. The technology isn't there right now. There's not much we can do. We have to rely on AI and machine learning to do the other boosts. Otherwise, if we try to do something, it's going to be really, really crazy and it's going to be too expensive, too big, too blocky. Like we need something to balance this out and supplement this so this doesn't get out of control. And Sony has found the right way, I feel, to be on the right end of this by advancing their AI and machine learning efforts to come up with better visuals. And again, is it perfect? No. Was DLSS perfect? No. Should DLSS been then cut off because it wasn't perfect? Absolutely not. DLSS is the darling of PC gaming at the moment, as it should be, because it's great, fantastic, technology. And I think what we can do as consumers is stop reversing our gears when it comes to technology. I hate when we do that, because that's the only way gaming is going to get better. Like, you can't snap your fingers and this technology gets better. We got to embrace the tech that is trying to balance out the complications that we may have in certain areas. For one, we got to stop doing that. And for two, we got to continue to be consumers and hold people's feet to the fire and just tell them to do better. And in this case, doing better is looking at the devs and telling them stop being lazy. We see what Treyarch did. They cut off all your excuses, for one. And then for two, we got to look at Sony and say, look, we get to where you would like to train this AI and machine learning under most scenarios, but it's a balancing act. You cannot put out patches this horrible that actually make the game worse, right? You can't approve stuff like that. Like, the future patches have to be great, okay? And I believe they will, just by default, as games are being developed with PSSR in mind, not just having PSSR put over top. But those are my thoughts. What are you guys' thoughts about all this? Do you have a PlayStation 5 Pro? Have you experienced, what is your experience with it? Have you experienced some of the games that have had issues? Or have you, like me, or you like just joyfully over excited about it because you've played games like Stellar Blade and Spider-Man? Let us know in the comment section below. Like I always say, here's what I think. But if you did like what I had to say, check out the links below to follow me. Again, they will lead you to Hard Digital Culture, Cloud Dosage, and MM2K Gaming. With that said, Happy New Year. Have a wonderful gaming day. Peace.